Day number 3, Jewish Age Millennium number 1. Just as the separating of dry land on day 3 of recreation was necessary for human life, so the separation to God of a holy people during the third millennial day was essential for establishing an environment in which truth and spiritual growth could flourish. And just as the creation of vegetation on that third Genesis day was the first installment in the refilling of the empty world, so the calling out of the seed of Abraham provides the first substantial and contiguous echelon of believers in the process of replacing the devil and his followers with a people after God's own heart, with the faith of Abraham, the father of many nations, providing the pattern of salvation for all who would later believe, Romans 4:17 and Galatians 3:7 through 9. Day number 4, Jewish Age Millennium number 2. Just as the separation of light from darkness into distinct and regular phases on the fourth Genesis day was necessary to provide a regular flow and sequence for time, required by human life, so the separation to God of a holy nation during the fourth millennial day was essential for stabilizing the environment in which truth and spiritual growth could flourish and then be witnessed to the nations. And just as the heavens were filled with the celestial lights on the fourth Genesis day, so the establishment of Israel, a holy nation to be a light to all the nations, was an essential step in the expansion of the family of God. Isaiah 42:6 and Acts 13:47. Separation. The calling out by God of a specific family and its development into a unique, witnessing nation necessitated its separation, its sanctification from all that was profane in the pagan world in which it existed. The mark of God's promise to Abraham of a holy progeny, namely circumcision, served to distinguish Israel as unique in God's eyes, and was also, importantly, a symbolic testimony of belief in God and his promises, Romans 2:29. The Mosaic law was also a means of separation, sanctification, and demarcation, for it called on Israel to be holy as I am holy, Leviticus 11:44 and 45 and 1 Peter 1:16, and an essential underlying principle in all of its precepts was to separate the holy from the profane, Leviticus 10:10 and 20:25 and 26. The Ten Commandments, the essence of the law, speak to this same basic idea of separating the people of God from anything evil, sanctifying our conduct in life's most important areas. Area number 1. Holiness toward God, sanctifying and separating him in what we think, do, and say. No other gods. Guarding the sanctity of how we think about him. No idols. Guarding the sanctity of how we act toward him. No misuse of his name. Guarding the sanctity of how we represent him in our speech. Area number 2. Holiness toward life, sanctifying and separating ourselves from reliance on the world. Keep the Sabbath, guarding the sanctity of the day of rest, trusting God, not ourselves, for provision in this life. Note, this is the only commandment not repeated in the New Testament. As the book of Hebrews emphatically assures us, specific day observance has been replaced with the reality of continual rest in and reliance on God, in the same way that animal sacrifice has been replaced by the reality of Christ's sacrifice. Hebrews 4:1 through 11. Since the cross, we are to rest in God at all times, not just on one particular day. Area number 3. Holiness toward authority, sanctifying and separating ourselves from rebellion against divinely constituted authority. Honoring father and mother. Guarding the sanctity of our behavior toward legitimate authority, all those who under the charge of God function as stewards in his place towards us, parents being the first and prime example. Area number 4. Holiness toward others, sanctifying and separating ourselves from infringement upon the right of others to use this life to seek God. No murder. Guarding the sanctity of life, the sine qua non for every human being to seek after God in the time God has given. No adultery. Guarding the sanctity of the family, the basic support network required by the vast majority of people for normal function in life, as a base for seeking God. No theft. guarding the sanctity of property, a necessary element for survival in the world that one may seek after God. No false witness, guarding the sanctity of freedom of the innocent before the law, an important requirement for being able to freely seek God. No covetousness, guarding the sanctity of freedom of action in general from threats of evil action and intent which impede, hinder, and prevent the search for God. Finally, the firm establishment of the nation Israel with the ascension of David, a clear type of Jesus Christ, Psalm 110, provided the dark world with a shining example of the righteousness and accompanying blessings from God upon a nation that followed him and his perfect divine standards, standards expressed in the law, the Old Testament, and the sanctified nation, which regulated an environment for seeking God and witnessing to him in the midst of a dark world in a way analogous to the regulating function of the heavenly bodies that produce the sequence of light necessary for human existence. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people who are his special property, separated from all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. Deuteronomy 7:6. And he said, "It is too small a thing for you to be my servant, to establish the tribes of Jacob, and to restore the sanctified ones of Israel. Therefore I have appointed you as a light for the nations, to be my instrument of salvation to the ends of the earth." Isaiah 49:6. Filling. With God's promise of progeny to Abraham and the birth of Isaac, the process of expansion of the family of God began in earnest, and the line of faith from Adam to Seth, a linear witness with little numerical expansion in the world, as the small remaining remnant of Noah and his 7 family members at the time of the flood demonstrates. 1 Peter 3:20 now develops into a significant expansion in breadth, as Israel, the vine, begins to flourish under the now more favorable circumstances and to spread out in the world in a manner analogous to the filling of the earth with vegetation on the 3rd Genesis day. Psalm 80. 8 through 16 and Hosea 10:1. The pledge of circumcision, the mark of a people apart, and the giving of the law, the perfect separation of right and wrong, served as prime elements of this sanctification. The formation, from this expanded family, of a holy nation was also key to God's plan of replacement, for as he says to Moses on the occasion of the golden calf rebellion, "I will make you into a great nation," Exodus 32:10. The protection of Israel in Egypt while her numbers grew, her testing under a harsh Pharaoh, her training in the wilderness, and the divinely directed and aided expulsion of the Canaanite tribes were all part and parcel of God's expansion of his family out of one man's seed. With the coming of the nation of Israel, a definite state within definable geographic boundaries under the initial direction of David, a clear type of Christ, the process of filling and replacement continues for the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham that his descendants would be more numerous than the stars of the heavens, analogous to the filling of the heavens on the 4th Genesis day, Genesis 15. 5. 22. 17 and 26. 4. And a harbinger of the replacement of the fallen angelic stars with believing stars who choose for God, compare Revelation 12. 4 with Revelation 12. 1. Being Abraham's spiritual seed, we are all stars in God's firmament. Romans 4:16. As the second pair of Genesis days focused on the completion of an essential environment for physical life through the separation of dry ground from water and of light from the darkness, specifically of concentrated sequential light, not the general division of light from darkness accomplished on day 1. So the second pair of millennial days, the Jewish age, finds God in his plan for human history, sanctifying for himself first a people, then a nation, to provide first an expanded family of God that would be holy and separate from the rest of the pagan world, then, as a nation, a safe haven for the worldwide testimony of God through the light of Israel. And as the second pair of Genesis days focuses on the initial filling of the earth with vegetation and of the heavens with the sun, the moon and the stars, So the second pair of millennial days, the Jewish age, finds the first significant expansion of the family of God in human history through Israel the vine and the nation Israel, as numerous as the stars. And so, in terms of numbers, the beginning of the process of replacing those angelic creatures who have chosen to disassociate themselves from the family of God.